in. So yeah, as I said, James is the founder of ClearStory International. A bulk of what I know about James, I think is it's a bit of it is what I read online. A bulk of it is over several conversations we've had since we met last year. And James has been exciting and really, really pivotal in my growth as a comms person. So since meeting him last year, I've learned how to write press statements better, and I've learned how to pitch stories better. And I think it's an exciting part of my journey that I never actually saw unfolding till I met James. So and here James will be talking to us about how we can leverage comms to talk to our customers. And why he's a perfect fit for this is because before James founded ClearStory, he handled PR and comms for one of the largest events in Dublin, right? That brought together startups from every single continent aside Antarctica, I guess, to one place. And yeah, so guys, meet James. James, meet the participants of the Tomato Factory 2022.
Right. Well, look, thanks very much for the kind introduction, Tolu, and a great pleasure to meet you all. Look forward to I suppose sharing with you some of my thoughts on, I suppose, the subject topic of communicating with your customers and how to build a brand and messaging around that, and try help kind of bring those users and customers to you guys. So as Tolu outlined there, so my background is obviously in everything from event PR to now kind of running a PR agency. So ClearStory International is about 5 years old now at this stage as a business. We work with everything from medical startups to your typical kind of software as a service companies, fintechs, cryptocurrency, blockchain. We work with some governments. We work with some other organizations like the Asian Development Bank and a few others, basically to help communicate with their own customers or certainly to build up their own brands. So I have a presentation prepared. I figured it might be the best place to start. Obviously where we cover, we would specialize in obviously the public relations side of things, as opposed to necessarily the branding and marketing side. Now it's all integrated if you're doing it well. But look, I might just kind of get going with this presentation here. And I'll happy to take questions at the end. So everyone can see my screen there, yeah?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so very quickly, as I just outlined there, ClearStory International, we work with, I suppose, scaling and emerging companies pretty much around the world: North America, Africa, Europe, Middle East, Southeast Asia. Those would be our our main markets. An introduction to the PR landscape for those who might not be familiar. Okay, can I just I don't know if you guys can raise your hands on this, but like who's worked in PR before, or has worked with maybe a PR agency, or is familiar with it? Okay, so this is all kind of pretty new to most of you. Okay, so I'm just going to introduce public relations. Okay, so public relations is what differentiates it from, say, marketing. Okay, so marketing is what you say about yourself. PR is what other people say about you. Okay, and obviously over the years, how you generate that PR has changed. There's what's known as earned media, which is you approaching journalists with a story and they agreeing to write it, and therefore getting publicity and notoriety from that, or you can go down, I suppose, the paid model, which is you go to a media publication, you provide the content, they publish it, but it's marked as sponsored, right? So it's not as impactful because the consumer knows that this is maybe a partnership, or that you guys have provided the content, or the editors might only kind of tweaked it slightly. So those are kind of the two models: earned and paid. Earned is always more valuable than paid because of the perception value, and public relations as opposed to marketing, where you can engage, say, Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter ads, or newspaper ads or radio ads, is relatively instantaneous, provided that you've got the content ready. Public relations, unfortunately, takes a bit of time. So that's the first thing. You know, when we start engaging for our clients, there's two tools that we use. The first are press releases that are used for announcements. So could be a funding announcement or a partnership, or an expansion release where a new office is opening or a new product is launched, or whatever it is. Those are always kind of press releases. They're tangible announcements that you can send to newspapers or radio stations or TV stations, to highlight what is happening in your organization. The other side then are what are known as pitches. Okay, so you'll often read kind of opinion pieces, regardless of whether it be maybe the economy or politics or business or whatever it might be. Sometimes those opinion pieces come about from what are known as pitches, right? So the organization might put forward their CEO to write an opinion piece on, I suppose the economic situation in X, or how the industry, how the I don't know, the technology industry is shifting from one methodology to another based on their expertise, whatever the subject matter might be. But that's a pitch centered on an op-ed, right? Then you also have what's known as a feature piece, right? So feature pieces tend to come about from pitches that are centered on the company and what might be happening at the company, or what innovations are happening at the company, and you're basically just outlining at a high level what your company is doing, maybe for its customers, or maybe as part of a new partnership or a new product, to better outcomes, whatever it might be. And a journalist might say, what, these guys seem really interesting. I have a real interest in these things. I'm going to run a feature on these guys, and that's how that comes about. Okay, so as I say, PR takes time, because when you think about what I've just outlined there, press releases are the fastest route to media coverage, but it does take a while in order to get the materials together, right? So you have to draft the materials. If there's a partner involved, you need to get them to sign off on it. You'll have your own management team kind of tweaking it and editing it and all that kind of stuff. It can maybe take up to 3-4 weeks before you even have the press release ready. And then of course you have to distribute it, and you have to engage with journalists then for photographs or video content or whatever it is to get it featured on the website. So it always is going to take time, and that's just one press release, right? So the next thing is then, if we acknowledge that PR takes time, well then consistency is really important, so that every 2 weeks or so you have maybe a new announcement or a new pitch or a new opinion piece that you want to get out there to those various editors, so that it becomes cumulative. Okay, so even though PR takes time, if you put in cumulative effort and making sure that you've got a multitude of different opportunities in the pipeline, it becomes really consistent then in terms of your market presence in the key publications that you're targeting, right? So those are kind of the two main golden rules, right? It's going to take you time, and you need to be consistent. The next thing then is, why are you doing it? Okay, so you have to be very clear on your objectives. We talked about here, this was the center of this discussion, is around talking to your customers, right, and building a brand around that. So you need to be very clear about what you want to communicate to your customers in the marketplace, and how PR is going to help you do that, right? So if it's a case whereby you want to, one of the objectives might be around market education. We want to inform our customers about, what we can do about them in X space. Well, then your messaging has to be, around that, and the content has to be compelling enough that somebody's going to want to write about it. Okay, so be very clear on your objectives in terms of the campaign. Always have a broader marketing strategy in place. Oftentimes we have clients come to us and they're just, we just want to do some PR, and they might be clear on their objectives, but they're not amplifying PR to its best possible application. So, the outcome in terms of public relations are media articles. Okay, they're independently written, and if you get it published in a credible publication, your customers will think better of you. Okay, that's the ultimate outcome. Now, how do you amplify that? Well, you can do so via taking that third-party article and advertising with it, and putting it on Facebook and running an ad. You can say, "Oh, have a look at what the Financial Times said about us," whatever it might be. You can also use it to disseminate to your email marketing base to your customers and say, hey, look, this is what X have to say about us. You can add it to your website. You can create a media page on your website. You can take the logo of the publication. You can have that on your website as in, as seen in, the radio station or TV station or whatever it might be. So make sure that you have a marketing strategy in place, that you are leveraging this media coverage and you're amplifying it to your customers so that they're seeing what this credible publication had to say about you. Okay. And then make sure you can adequately resource the campaign. And what I mean by that is, content production, as many of you know, is very time intensive, whether it be blogs, whether it be photography, whether it be video, it all takes an awful lot of time. So make sure that there's somebody there whose responsibility it is to write the content, the press releases, the pitches, whatever it is, that is doing the media targeting. And Tony's obviously been doing that himself the last kind of year and a half. And learning from that experience, but making sure that somebody has ownership of it, so that again you can drive that consistency and really good content. Okay, so those are kind of the golden rules. I'm going to just outline to you just very quickly in terms of the agency environment. I'm not going to, it's just a general education piece. I'm not going to hover over it, but in effect, there's different types of agencies. Okay, there's what's known as a full service agency in terms of PR, and they might do advertising, they might do marketing, they also might do PR as well. Okay, so or influencer marketing. So what that means is that you go to a PR agency, you'll have a campaign that you want to roll out. They'll put together the ad content, whether it be video, photography, whatever. They'll put together timings for influencers or then like relationships with influencers, and they will approach the media around the campaign as well and fold the three of them in together. Okay, so that's typically how that works. You also have then kind of what are known as bespoke agencies. We would be known as a bespoke agency whereby we specialize in one area, which is technology or early stage kind of technology startups, and we put together content specifically for journalists. So we don't do influencer marketing, we don't do marketing, we don't do any of that kind of stuff. We just focus purely on reputation building, and as such, we'd be known as a bespoke agency. And in terms of kind of the models that they operate, some of them work on retainers, so you pay them $1,000 or $500 a month, whatever it might be, and then on top of the retainer, for any special projects, they'll charge you by the hour based on whoever's involved in the campaign. So there's no certainty of budget in that case. You don't know exactly what you're going to spend. You could spend, if you don't use them for the month, you spend 500, but if you do use them, you might end up spending 1,500, right? It's very hard to see. Some agencies then run a flat fee model where it's, and the fees can differ kind of based on the market, but flat fees could be 500 a month right the way up to 2,000 euros per month, but that's all you're going to pay, but you have a certain level of deliverables as part of that. Some agencies do pay by the article. Now that can work to an advantage or disadvantage depending. So you can by paying by the article, let's say the agency might say, look, for every article we bring to you, we're going to give $1,000. And that's how they get paid. And then some are obviously freelance and they operate between those three kind of pay models. So then, in terms of kind of price, what to expect, right? I have this in euros. It differs market to market, okay? So, in parts of Europe, you might find that you'll get a freelancer for between 500 and 1,000 euros per month, or US dollars even. For if it's paid per article, it's around the same. Again, agency, it can vary from 500 euro a month right the way up to 10,000 euros a month. It just depends, right? Now, what I'm quoting here would be prices, say, across North America and Europe. Middle East would probably fall into this bracket as well. Southeast Asia, it would be about the same. But look, as I say, every market is different. Factors to watch out for then, in terms of like if you are doing agency selection, and this again is just giving you guys a broad bit of an education on the PR agency landscape. You want to screen for the team. What area of expertise do they have, and what experience do they have? Where do they specialize in? So do they specialize in tech, health, early stage companies, corporates, corporate reputation, whatever it might be. What geographic reach have they got? So, how big is their database of contacts in different markets? What kind of quality of deliverables can you expect? Some agencies just push things over the news wires, which are basically kind of paid channels of PR that don't really deliver much value. And some agencies kind of say, oh yeah, we can deliver X. Really, they're pushing it over the wires. So make sure the quality of deliverables are really good, and then make sure that they have the right kind of media targets that are relevant for your objectives and what you want to achieve. And look, kind of in general, the media landscape out there, you'll be familiar with it. For most of you maybe who are working for early stage companies or startups, or maybe looking to start your own company, there's startup focused outlets, so Startup Valley News, and kind of EU startups, or I think there's a whole ecosystem of startup linked publications, various different news outlets, obviously that are covering current affairs and current market movements and whatnot, business, tech, and any other vertical that you're thinking of. So health, sport, anything along those lines. So again, that's just kind of an overview of the agency environment, if that's a route that you might want to take. So the next point I'm going to address, having gone through the golden rules, is around content. Okay, so before you start approaching customers, it's very important that you get the content right first. A lot of people do it the other way around. They start pushing content without really investing in it, and it doesn't connect with your customers. So it's not really going to get you far. So the first thing we always advise clients is to put together your own company narrative, okay, which is effectively what is it that you want to say. So it's the narrative is always the story that you want to put out there. It can be used for your marketing collateral. It can be used for your public relations. It can be used for blogs. It can be used for a whole host of different things. Typically, it contains your key messaging. Okay, so whatever at a high level you guys want to promote, and you want your customers to know, that is what kind of makes the center of the messaging. Okay, now the messaging itself might not be that interesting, right? So it could be the case of, we want our customers to know that we're the leading company for X, or we're the leading company for Y. That's not going to be overly compelling for a journalist. Okay, but you still want to get it in there. So when you're constructing your key messaging, you want to highlight things like credibility, right? So the size and scale of maybe your customer base, the size and scale of your team, the expertise of your team, how fast as a company you've grown, or as an organization you've grown, all of the things that demonstrate. So if your core message is, we are the leading X of Y, well, you need to qualify that, and all of those factors of size and scale would incorporate, or would make up that messaging, to communicate to your customers that you are the leading company in whatever space. Okay, always remember that the narrative typically is around the product and the company, but realistically people want the story around it. Okay, so again, the company history, the founder history, what inspired the company to come into existence, or the organization to come into existence, what's the human interest behind the story. That all goes into the narrative as well. If you're getting these things right, the rest will typically follow. Okay, so what is ultimately the narrative, right? So we talked about there, you want to get your core messaging in, but the core messaging typically isn't the story that people are going to want to read. So in effect, you need to qualify as much as possible your company and organization. Size and scale factors, as I say, whether it be company growth, whether it be number of users, number of employees, the offices you guys have, the amount of hours that went into the building of such a product, whatever it might be. But you want to quantify how you are the leading X of Y. Then as well, you want to qualify your leadership team, right? So look at biographies, their backgrounds. So if you've won any awards, if you've been recognized as, kind of the 30 under 30, in Forbes Africa, whatever it might be. Obviously, you want to look at your investors then as well, and the wider team. Have you, secured a key hire from a competitor that's like, a really talented and notable kind of hire? Are your investors kind of, have they got good pedigree? And what we mean by pedigree is that if you bring on an investor who's had, a big win, would have invested in, Uber before it was, what it is now, or, whatever other kind of major companies have come out of, um, the continent. Those are the kinds of investors that you want to attract and talk about and leverage. And some of those, like if you haven't got investors, you might have board members, but you're really just telling the journalists, it's a qualification factor that the people backing us have backed other successful people. And then you want to, get into the human interest bit. We had a founder there a couple of weeks ago we were interviewing, and he's managed to put together a technology company with a chronic pain condition. He suffers terribly from migraines on a near daily basis. So that's a really interesting entrepreneur story, because, and it's obviously human interest, it's very personal, and he's more than comfortable kind of talking about it. But it highlights that, um, you can be successful despite challenges, and journalists love those kinds of stories, because it's stories about adversity and triumph and all that kind of stuff, and it's really human interest centered. So we're all familiar with, say, rags to riches stories. People who might have come from a single income family, or no income family, who managed to turn their lives around, and build a really successful company and all the rest of it. These are all kind of stories that you can leverage as well, in generating interest with journalists to talk to your customers. Mission, vision, purpose is also very important. So what is the mission of your organization, your charity, your company? Where do you want to bring it, and what's the purpose of it? What problem are you looking to solve? These, again, are very important things that you want to include in your narrative. And then the positioning of your company, right? So positioning can be challenging depending, right? So I think we're working with a data science client at the moment that's works with finance companies, health companies, supply chain companies, manufacturers, really, really kind of broad customer base, which poses a positioning challenge, right? Because you've got 4 different types of audiences, and typically the positioning would sit on top of that. So your positioning might be, we're the best data science, we're the best data scientists, in who can do X, Y, and Z, right? But your messaging to each particular target audience will be slightly different, but it sits under the same positioning. So just mind your position. Be very conscious of it. It's a very simple. It's a statement. It's a line or 2 lines. It basically summarizes what you do in the marketplace and who you do it for. If I was to summarize what a positioning statement is. And then focus on the product features, not the mechanics, right? So there's no point getting into the weeds in terms of how you manage to build a product or the company, or how the manufacturing line works or whatever. Really, what you want to talk about is the product features. Here's the product. This is the problem that it solves. This is how it solves it, and keep it at a very high level, and keep it in very kind of plain English, in that it's very easy for everybody to understand. And then you want to contextualize your company in the marketplace. So you're going to have competitors. There's going to be other things happening in the market. Where do you guys fit in, right? Whether that be, again, the charity sector, organization, or company, whatever it might be. You always want to explain where you fit in the market, and where you guys are solving. Okay. So let's move on here. So how is the narrative written? Okay. And I know we're kind of dealing with the basics here, but this is, the content that you need to know your customer, right? And to talk to your customer. So the first thing is you want to gather all the materials from your end. Okay. So, typically what we would do is we go through websites, we go through LinkedIn profiles, we go through, sales collateral, marketing collateral, investor decks, blogs, previous news articles. So anything that's ever been written about our client, we put in one place. And it's like a message, like it's just a Word document or a Google Doc where we just throw all this content into, so we all know it's in the one place. And that's what's known as the messaging document. Okay, so it's just one place with every written word that's ever been written about the company, the founders and the directors and all that kind of stuff, right? Then after that, we typically interview the CEO or the founder or somebody from the executive team to get a little bit more background as to their own journey, their own entrepreneur journey, the trials and tribulations. If they got, like we've come across founders who have been, Buddhist monks, who've taken vows of silence for 3 years or 4 years, whatever it was. Some, some that were in special forces, some were in, went to all the Ivy League schools and all the rest of it. But it's all great for that human interest element. And then we also get the mission, vision, purpose. Where are you going with the company? What's your ambition for it? What do you want to do? And you get some great stuff, in terms of qualification factors and human interest factors and all the rest of it. And we put that in all in one document as well. And then we do the first draft of the narrative. We break it into a few different stages. So like just a high level summary of what the company is. And that will consist of, say, the positioning statement, you know, uh, all the key facts and figures around the company at a high level and some of the key descriptions. Then we might do the company biography, or the company history. We do the founder biography. We do the product features. We do, I suppose, kind of size and scale, industry background, all of those kind of things that I've just covered there. And we do the first draft. We then send it on to the client to edit. We get it approved. Probably takes 2 to 3 weeks. Now, from your end, if you're starting from scratch, you're gathering all the material, get it all into one place. If you yourself are the founder or the leader of the organization, you don't need to interview yourself, which is great, but do get some of your key thoughts down on paper first. And then basically with the narrative, you're drafting it the way you would want a reader, a customer, to digest it. Okay, it's very easy to read. It flows. It has all the key information that you would hope to find out about the company. And it's not marketing. It's not overly promotional. It's not sales, because people switch off when they feel they're being sold, right? So it's facts. It's very fact and direct kind of language. So X Corp is Xcore is a Nigerian headquartered SaaS company that works with manufacturing companies to solve data science issues, whatever it is, right? That's your positioning statement, and then everything kind of tends to flow from that. Okay, so then in terms of kind of what journalists want to hear about, and kind of the art of storytelling. So once you have your narrative, really it's about news for them. Okay, you have to remember that journalists are customers too, but you need them to write about you, so that you can talk to your customers, right? So the first thing you want to kind of figure out is, what news have we got, right? So have a look over the last 2-3 months. Have you signed any new partnerships? Have you hit any new milestones in terms of revenue or in terms of customers? Have you raised any money? Have you opened a new office? Have you hired more people? So all of these are news items that you can leverage to get in front of journalists. And as I say, you put those out via press releases. Have you any human interest stories? So a couple of years ago, we done our own kind of PR around myself. Would have been before the pandemic, about 3 years ago. And I think every year there's the state exams for people trying to get into college or whatever. And I had a human interest story about my own experience that I took, that we pitched to journalists, and we got loads of PR around that, because the journalists were trying to explain to people that, look, you might not do well in your exams, but you can still be successful, or whatever it is. So those human interest stories, journalists love that, because it helps them fill content. And if it's around something that's really current, like exam season or holidays or Valentine's Day or whatever it might be, you can leverage those kind of things for that. Opinion pieces, as I say, if you have a different opinion as to where the market is going to go, or if it's like in cryptocurrency, and you might feel that it has lower to go or it'll recover quickly, you'll see a lot of people out giving opinions about these things. They basically pitch their opinion to editors, and the editors take them and regurgitate them. And then commentary is the last one, where, say, like, I don't know if you're seeing what's happening in the United States at the moment with, like, Roe versus Wade, the abortion legislation. There's a lot of companies sending a commentary and basically saying, despite what's happening, we're still going to do X for our employees, or we still believe X is the right thing to do. And they're just releasing small statements, and they're sending those out to journalists to carry with the story to flesh it out as it's moving very quickly. So those are kind of the four main areas that journalists look for in terms of storytelling. And then, ultimately what you want to be able to do then when you are being interviewed and you're engaged with the journalist, you want to be very, and this is where the narrative comes in, you want to be very clear on the story that you want to tell. You want to obviously let them know how the product was developed and who's inspired you, but ultimately have, like, the narrative has all of that information. So, if you draft it, you can pretty much hand it to anybody to speak on your behalf because all of the content is there. That's really what you're looking to enable. You want to be able to describe your product or your charity or whatever it might be in very simple language, right? So that anybody can understand. And again, when you're trying to communicate with your customers via PR, simple descriptive language is all you need. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is why we do it. A lot of people tend to meander and they try to fit all this unnecessary content into a sentence. Just keep it simple, and customers will be able to understand very easily what you understand. Be able to talk about your USP, your unique selling point, and what makes you different. Be able to talk about your ambitions and what you want to do. Whether it be on a global scale, a local scale, whatever it might be. And maybe have an example of somebody that you want to emulate, and then be able to include facts and figures, and that gives you added credibility. If you can talk with authority in terms of the company, in terms of your footprint in the marketplace, or what you're planning to do, and again, just speak with facts and figures, it'll lend authority, and journalists will love that. We had a client being interviewed by the Financial Times there a couple of weeks ago, and he said the phrase, now I wouldn't be an expert in that. And we were on the call and we knew the journalist was done with the interview. So, you don't want to betray yourself, and you always want to put your best foot forward in terms of the story that you're trying to get across the line. So then, step by step, how to stand out. So identify your USP and who you are. You'll have other competitors. See what they're doing first. Have a look at their own news profile and the stories they're pushing, and then take that, go back to your narrative, figure out exactly your USP, and highlight that to journalists. Be able to describe yourself very, very simply. We do X for Y. We had a client in Singapore a couple of years ago, and her descriptor was like 5 or 6 lines, and you really had to go through every line to get to the end of what the company was. And in the end, we reframed it and we said, okay, so you're basically Southeast Asia's leading entrepreneur network for women. And it was like, yeah, that's pretty much, that summarizes what we do and who we are. Perfect. Keep it simple. Be bold and brazen. Rejection is never personal. So what we mean by that is you'll pitch hundreds of journalists and you won't get a hit, right? You just need to keep swinging. If it's not, always have a look at your media target list. If it's not the target list, maybe it's the content. It's not strong enough. So we sent out a press release there for a Canadian client during the week. And I had a look, I reviewed the press release, and it said that it was basically a housing solution. And they were claiming that it was like 92% cheaper than normal housing. Well, if I'm a journalist, I don't think that's credible. So I'm going to ignore that story. So we need to reframe the release so that we're not citing how cheap it is. We might be citing, the potential use of it or whatever it might be. But again, you just need to keep trying different things. Rejection is never personal. Get to know the who's who within your space, right? So there's particular journalists that cover particular beats. Make sure you know who they are. Make sure you build up relationships with them. And again, look, remember that the journalists are your conduit to your customers and talking to your customers about your product when it comes to public relations. And again, you have a brand and marketing strategy, it all kind of fits into that. So just get to know who's who within that space. And look, guys, that's really it at a very high level. I'll just stop sharing the screen now and I might take some questions.
All right, thank you so much, James. That was really an informative session. So guys, we'll be taking questions. Any questions you have for James? It might be from his presentation, it might be out of it, it might be personal, and it might be from work too. So whatever you have, just shoot. Who's going first? Emmanuel. Emmanuel, are you here?
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm trying to like phrase the question in my head. Once it's clear, I'll ask it.
No,
Yeah, no worries at all.
don't need to
Yeah.
phrase it in your head. Just ask it. I think in the process of asking it, it becomes clearer.
Fair enough.
Do you know what I could do? Because again, look, putting people on the spot to ask questions and that, it doesn't always become kind of clear at the time. What I can do is I'll send you a copy of the presentation, Tolu, and if you wish, then if anyone has any follow-on questions or need anything, more than happy to come back and give you guys a further overview on it.
Okay, that works too. That works too. Thank you, James.
Okay, no worries. Well, look, guys, if there's no questions, again, look, I'll share this presentation on with Tolu later on today, and he'll circulate it to everyone. If you guys have any questions, feel free to at any stage as you're putting this into practice, let me know, and more than happy then to give you guys a steer.
All right.
Great.
Yeah. So I have a question. Just to you in course of your presentation, you made mention of putting your organization's story in context of the market, especially when approaching PR agencies. Probably you could break that down a bit more,
Sure.
and share practical examples on how maybe XYZ clients that you worked with before, you helped them achieve that.
Yeah, sure. So I suppose when you are looking to contextualize, we'll say your charity or your company, whatever it might be, really what we're saying here is, like there's always an industry picture that you're taking part in. So if I give an example here, let's just say you've created, you're a fashion designer, and you have created a new dress, we'll say, right? It's a different take on an existing style. Okay. So for the narrative, the way you want to break that down is you want to explain where you fit. So the existing style that's out there. Okay. You want to talk about why you have taken the direction you have taken, and why maybe the rest of the industry is slow to adopt this new style, right? And why you guys are taking this position, why you're promoting it, and also the benefits of the style of dress, whether it be for customers, right? That it's maybe it fits more into historical tradition, or it fits more into contemporary style, or it fits more into a more expressive kind of style, whatever it might be. And when you apply that to, say, a charity, it could be the case that you have launched a new service for users or customers, and again, you want to explain why you're doing that in the context of the industry, what's out there at the moment, what you the reason why you're doing it. I suppose maybe it's because there's a greater need for this service now. The economy might not be as good. There's more people in need of X. That's why we're rolling out this service. So you're just really explaining why you're doing what you're doing, and in some cases you can use a lot of industry kind of background and statistics or whatever, or in some cases you can just outline very simply, we've noticed X and now we're going to do Y. I hope that answers the question, Toto. Sorry.
Yeah, it does. It puts it into perspective. So that's like basically my only question. So just like you said, I would go over the presentation, and you trust me. If I have questions, I'll shoot them
That's
to you
okay.
via
No
email.
worries at all. No worries at all. Well, listen, absolute pleasure to meet everyone, and enjoy your weekend. And yeah, look, thanks for setting this up, Tolu. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much, James. We'll be catching up.
Take care, guys. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye, James. Thank you.
All right. So, how is everybody? This one, you people did not want to say anything today. Is it the weather? I think I can stop right there.
Practically in and out. Like, let me not say I did not.